Hey fish friends, Zenzo Tazawa Tanks, back with another video. So do you want to learn how to service an aquarium or clean a fish tank like a pro? Stay tuned to learn more. So it sounds a little bit funny for me to call myself a pro or an expert or something like that, and I don't really consider myself to be an expert. I consider myself to be a pretty experienced fish keeper. I've been keeping fish for many years, and made a lot of mistakes in my past, and I've done a lot of great things, and I'm continually learning to better myself as a fish keeper and learning more about the hobby all the time. As far as being a pro, and I kind of feel weird calling myself a pro, but really the fact is that I am, and the reason why is I have a fish keeping business, a fish tank cleaning business, an aquarium service business. So I do have businesses, commercial businesses, private residents, etc., that do pay me to service their aquariums, whether it be cleaning a tank or troubleshooting or moving a tank or stocking a tank, etc. I've done all of it. So as I'm just kind of down here in the fish room gathering my supplies, I thought, why don't I just share a couple tips that might help some of you in just maintaining your tanks and maybe doing it like a pro. So and feel free to give me a hard time and make fun of me in the comments. I'm totally cool with that. So anyway, as most people in the hobby probably do, is they do the traditional siphon and bucket, right? So if you have a 10-gallon tank or a 15, 20-gallon tank, that's probably okay. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way with like a 20-gallon tank or a 10-gallon tank, because you're really not carrying a whole lot of water. So if you're, just your beginner fish keeper, or you're into smaller tanks, you probably just clean using your typical siphon, a gravel vac, cleaning along the substrate of the tank, letting that flow into a bucket, and then dumping the bucket, and then you're probably refilling that bucket in a sink or a bathtub or something like that, and adding conditioner to that water and then pouring it back into the tank. The problem with that is that it's heavy. So a 5-gallon bucket, when this is full of water, it's going to weigh approximately 40 pounds, give or take, depending on how full you fill it up. So 40 pounds is not significantly heavy if you're a bigger person or a stronger person. Like for me, as an example, I'm a weightlifter or a power lifter, and so I'm always lifting heavy weights. So for me, carrying a 40 pound bucket of water is not that difficult. But if it's a lot of water that I'm having to move, it can get pretty tiring, and it's very time consuming. So I try to avoid buckets at all costs. I always bring lots of buckets with me, because you never know what the situation is, and I might need to put something in a bucket or just move a little bit of water. So I always carry buckets with me. But my general rule of thumb is I don't carry water in buckets for either a long distance, or generally no more than about 5 gallons, because I don't want to be moving lots of water. So there are a couple tools that you can use. The first tool that I would recommend, and this is probably pretty common to a lot of you if you've watched different YouTube videos, or you've seen these in your store, and that's basically a water changer. This one happens to be the Python brand. There's another brand made by Aquarium. I've used that before, and I still have parts of it, but it wasn't as robust for me, and it broke eventually. I actually broke a couple of them, and finally I said I'm switching to the Python. So this is a Python, and basically the way that it works is you have different adapters on this, and you can attach it to multiple types of threaded fittings on a sink or a faucet, and you can turn that faucet on and actually create a siphon and start drawing water out of the tank with this device, and then you can do the gravel vac in the tank, and then you can then reverse the valve in the device, and then you can then put clean water through that faucet right back into the fish tank. So this is a very common method. It's pretty easy. These are not very expensive. I think I bought this one through Aquarium Co-op's website for I don't know, like $39 or something. I don't know. Don't quote me on the price. But it was, it wasn't that expensive. It was pretty close to the same price as the Aquarium one. I think the Aquarium might be a few bucks cheaper, but this is a much better product in my opinion and in my experience. So I do use this, but this is not my primary way of pulling water out of tanks, because I find that it's pretty slow if I'm doing a large tank or multiple tanks. And depending on gravity, you might have to have that faucet running the entire time. Sometimes if the tank is higher and the faucet is lower, then you can just start the siphon by turning on the water in the sink, and then you can just turn it off and it will continue to flow. But if it's not at a decline, you might have to end up keeping that faucet running. So it does waste water and it takes a while, but that is an option. My method and what I like to use, and this is what I see a lot of other professionals use, and when I say professionals, I'm talking about other people that are servicing tanks professionally, getting paid, or they own fish stores, or they have very large fish rooms where they're doing breeding and selling fish, etc. So basically, if they're doing it on a very large scale and probably monetizing in some fashion, whether it be selling fish or selling plants or for a YouTube channel or sell, etc. And that's just with using a pump. So I have a couple different pumps that I use, and I'm just a couple different examples here. And essentially, what this is it's just an inexpensive pump that you can attach to a vinyl tube, and you put the pump in the tank and plug it in, and then you direct the vinyl tube wherever you want. You can water flowers with it, you can put it on your lawn, you can dump it in the sink, whatever, and you just plug it in, the pump turns on, and it pumps water directly out of your tank. This one happens to be like a little fountain pump. I think I bought this at Lowe's for right around 35 or 40 bucks. So it was pretty inexpensive. It's paid for itself many times over in service jobs. So this is something that I always keep in my travel bag when I'm doing tanks. And then I have another one here. This is pretty much the same thing. This is an Aquarium pump. And this one's rated at about 450 gallons per hour. This one's rated around 390 gallons per hour, something like that. But also, it's the same thing. You stick this in the tank, and you plug it in, and you pump the water out. So I can do a lot of water changes with my pumps. It's a lot faster, it's a lot more efficient, and I can also do multiple tanks at the same time. So I can actually drain 2 tanks at one time. So let's say that I'm at a business where they have a couple of tanks. And if they're within eyesight, then I can do one and do the other. Or even if they're not too far apart, I can quickly kind of walk back and forth and monitor the water levels and pump water out at the same time. So it's a much faster way. Now it's not 100%, so it's not going to do any gravel vacuuming. So that's where your regular gravel vac comes into play, and that's why I do carry a bucket, because sometimes I will have to do a little bit of gravel vacuuming. But it's a very small amount as I'm drawing most of the water out with the pumps. I'll do a little bit of gravel vacuuming with the normal gravel vac, and then dump out the detritus, and then continue pumping with the pump. So that would be the biggest tip, and I've been doing this for quite a while, and I will never go back to carrying buckets or any other method, because it's just it's a back saver, it's a time saver. If you have multiple tanks, large tanks, if you want to set up your own service business, you got to get a couple of those. Another tip that I would say is to always have clamps, whether you're doing multiple tanks or just your one tank at home. You always want to have some type of clamp, and this is useful in draining water and in filling water, whether you're using just a regular siphon and you're going to clip it to the bucket, or if you need to clip a hose to the tank when you're refilling, or clipping the python to the tank when you're refilling. You want to have a clip for the tank, a clip or a clamp, I should say. I'm sure some of you have had situations where you didn't have a clamp and you thought the water was going fine into the tank through a hose or a tube or something like that, and it kind of let go and spilled water all over the floor. And I've done it. I've done it more than once, and you'd think I would have learned the first time, but I didn't. So I always use clips now. So something like this is just an inexpensive clamp that you can buy at your local hardware store. They're not very much. You can get these ones, like they're metal. You can get plastic ones. This is actually even simpler, and this is basically just a clamp that is used for like those small clip-on lamps that you can find at the hardware store for like $5 or $6, and I actually use those as pendant lights for above the tank. And I just took off the clamps and I used these, so I can just use these clamps. They have a pretty good amount of force, definitely enough force to hold, you know, even something as thick as a garden hose. You know, that's pumping out, you know, 700 or 800 gallons per hour. It holds it very well. Another tip that I would suggest is to make sure that you have the right type of scrubber to clean the surface of your aquarium, the glass surface. There are a couple different types, and most people probably have like the kind of the scrubber type, which is like a soft material that you can just scrub. I like to have a couple of options because sometimes I encounter, like for example, when I do saltwater tanks, the coralline algae is very hard to get off, and the scrubber will not get it off. Or it might just be a tank where the customer doesn't want me to come all the time because they can't afford it, or they just want me to come and do major services on occasion. So they might have a large buildup of algae, and that algae, if it gets thick or if it gets hard, depending on what kind of algae it is, it's almost impossible to get off with just a regular scrubber. So I always use the blade option. So this is actually a scrubber. This one's made by Kent Marine, pretty inexpensive. I bought it online, and has a nice long stick, which is good for, you know, taller tanks, so I can even get down to the bottom of 120s and things like that. And this is interchangeable, so I can take this blade out and then I can pop in the softer scrubber. So, and then it also comes with a plastic one as well if you're doing acrylic tanks. So again, it's just an easy way to ensure that you have the right tool for servicing a tank. So I just pulled that out. Here's a soft one if I have, you know, softer stuff to put in, or softer glass to clean, or softer algae to clean, and then I can just scrub it with this. So, you know, having the right equipment doesn't have to be expensive. You just make sure that you have something that works. And if you don't want to purchase a scrubber or a cleaner that has a blade, you can use something as easy as like an old credit card, or an old ATM debit card, etc., or even like an old hotel key that you've kept and you forgot to, you know, leave at the hotel when you checked out. Something as simple as just a small plastic card, you can use that as well. The only difference is then you have to stick your whole arm in the tank, and depending on the tank, you might not want salt water all over your arm, or you might not want to put your arm in the tank because the fish might bite you, etc. I have some of those, actually, some of my customers have fish tanks that I will not stick my arm in unless I have it protected by something, because the fish will bite me and attack me. So I like to use tools rather than my arm. And then the last tip I have is kind of more of a larger scale tip, and this is something that you would use if you have multiple tanks, like in a fish room, or if you are going to create like a service business, or if you do have a service business. And that is to get a rolling garbage can. So here you can see this is like a Rubbermaid. I'm hoping it's in the shot. I'm sure it is, with the wide angle. So this is just a Rubbermaid trash can that I have, and I have it on the dolly that you can purchase. It's on wheels. So this one is 44 gallons, and you know, I have the lid for it, obviously. One thing that's important is to make sure that you have one that's dedicated for your fish tanks. So you can see very clearly that it says fish only, as I do not use this for anything else other than aquarium water. I don't put any leaves in there, I don't put any garbage in there, I don't do anything except for cleaning fish tanks with this trash can. They're not very expensive. You can get these at Lowe's or Home Depot for pretty inexpensive. I probably got this for less than $60 or something like that, and 60, $70. It was definitely, you know, worth the investment to have a quality trash can, and one that's on wheels. So what I can do, and I do this at one of my commercial customers. So I have to go up an elevator to the 5th floor, go down a hallway, service a tank, and then I have to go further down a hallway to the janitor's room, where they have a janitor sink where I can drain water and then refill water, etc. So I could never do that with buckets, because it would be a huge amount of work and it would take me hours and hours. And I'm just too far away to pump water through with hoses and pythons and things like that. So what I have to do is I have to pump water out of the tank into the trash can. I can then roll the trash can on the wheels down to the janitor's closet, pump the water out of the trash can into the sink, and then refill it, and then roll it back, and then dump it, and then pump it back in the tank. So it does take a bit of time, but I'm not carrying any buckets, and it's much better. And as far as time is concerned, for me, time is money, and that sounds very cliche, but if I'm doing a fish tank, and let's say that I'm charging a customer $115 to service a particular fish tank in a business, if it takes me 2 hours to do it because I've got to carry a bunch of buckets around and things like that, I'm still only getting paid that $115, whether it takes me 2 hours or it takes me 50 minutes. So if I use all of these tools, all of my pumps and my trash can, etc., all the tools that I bring with me, I can service that tank in about 45 minutes or so, 45, 50 minutes. And I'm cleaned up and I'm done, and I've given them an invoice and they've paid me all within an hour. So within an hour of me arriving, getting set up, cleaning the tank, and then putting everything back and cleaning up after myself and getting the invoice to the customer and getting paid, I'm basically in and out within an hour. And that's very important versus, if it took me 2 hours or longer, that's taking away from my ability to service other tanks during that day, or to come back and enjoy my own fish, or spend time with my family, or focus on my other job and other ways of making revenue. So this could be a big time saver. So that's all I really had today. Was just wanted to share a few tips. Nothing earth-shattering, stuff that you've seen before, but I thought I would just kind of put it all together and explain why I use those tools and why you should as well. So as always, I appreciate your viewership. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. That's cool. I mean, it's good for me to know if you don't like it, but if you don't like it, at least tell me why in the comments. Just say, hey, your video sucks because of A, B, and C. And that way I can at least know, versus like, I wonder why they didn't like the video, kind of a thing. And then if you aren't subscribed and you like this content, and if you like other videos, please do. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very much. It's much appreciated. So thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.